Do I understand right? Am I or remembering this correctly that like that moose was one of the very first animals ever killed with the Encore pistol?
Well, the one in Maine was the first thing shot ever with an Encore pistol. That was the year that we introduced it, or got ready to introduce it. When I had the gun, it didn't even have officially a name yet.
Hi there, John McAdams here. Thanks a lot for joining me in episode 387 of the Big Game Hunting Podcast. Larry Weishuhn, also known as Mr. Whitetail, joins me on the show today to talk about his favorite cartridges for hunting darn near anything. Now, similar to what Hootie Hoo, Joseph Von Benedict, and Ron Spomer and I did in episodes 372, 315, and 336, Larry and I play a little game on the show today where we each list our favorite cartridge and bullet for hunting specific species of game, ranging from Coues whitetail deer all the way up to thick-skinned dangerous game. Plus, we also talk about just about everything in the middle, like feral hogs, black bear, elk, moose, and the like. Now, the catch is we cannot reuse a cartridge for multiple species. Additionally, the last two cartridges we each discuss are our favorite all-around hunting cartridges. So in those cases, it is permissible to use a cartridge that we listed previously, but you can't have your favorite deer cartridge be your favorite elk cartridge, etc. Before Larry and I get started, make sure you are on my email list by going to biggamehuntingpodcast.com/ebook, all one word. Sign up there. You will get my free ebook on the best hunting cartridges when you do so. Plus, you'll also start to receive the emails I send out every weekday about hunting, shooting, ballistics, things like that. And if you like the Big Game Hunting Podcast, you will love those emails. So go to biggamehuntingpodcast.com/ebook or at the link in the episode description, sign up there. Now, let's get started talking to Larry. Well, good morning, Larry. It is a pleasure having you back on the show. I got a lot of great feedback from the last time you were on talking about the ins and outs of hunting whitetail deer with me. Everyone loved that, so I thought it'd be awesome to bring you back on and play the cartridge or caliber game with you that I play with a couple of other people.
I am truly honored to be back on with you, John. I know you just got back from Africa, and I can't wait to hear some of those tales a little bit farther down the road.
Well, maybe some of those will come out in the interview today. So what we'll do is to brief everyone on the rules of the game. We're going to talk about yours and my favorite cartridge and bullet for hunting individual species, talking everything from whitetail deer up to and including thick-skinned dangerous game in Africa. So we'll talk about each of our favorite choices for deer, for elk, for bear under those different conditions. And when we talk about something, you can, of course, feel free to share an interesting anecdote or story involving it or whatever as you choose. You give yours, I'll give mine. Now, the rub here, we cannot reuse a cartridge for multiple species of game. So your deer cartridge can't be your elk cartridge.
Shucks.
And then at the very end of it, we're going to give two kind of all-around cartridges, one for basically everything that's not dangerous game, and then one for everything that is dangerous, or everything to include dangerous game. And in that case, you can reuse it. So your elk cartridge can be your favorite all-around cartridge.
Gotcha.
So makes sense? Any questions before we get started?
Not that I can think of right now. There'll probably be one or two down the way.
Well, that's all right. So I will keep track of everything on this end, and then I'll recap it all at the end of the show for everybody. So you are Mr. Whitetail, so we are going to start with your favorite cartridge for hunting eastern whitetail, and that is to say deer under thicker conditions, say 150-yard shot or closer. What is your favorite cartridge for that, and what bullet are you thinking?
Having grown up in those kind of situations, there's lots of favorite ones. It's hard to narrow down to one of them, but probably if I was going to do that kind of situation, it would probably be a 308. Probably in a 165 to 180 grain bullet. I use a lot of Hornady bullets as well too, so it'd probably be one of the Hornadys, but relatively close range, probably a 308.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is my same choice, too. I shot my first two deer with a 308 Winchester out here in East Texas. One was like a 60-yard shot. One was 100 yards. And like you, I'll go with a 165 grain bullet. I chose a Federal Fusion, but 165 grain Hornady interlock or something like that will also work darn well.
Yes, sir.
Let's move things out a little bit. So we'll stay in the deer realm. So this will be for mule deer / western whitetail, but longer range shots. So what's your choice here?
It would probably come down to either the 280 Remington or a 280 Ackley. I love the 7mm cartridges, and probably since I wouldn't be using the 280 Ackley down the way, I would probably say that the 280 Ackley would be one of my choices, one of my top choices.
Okay, very good. That's a good choice. What bullet are you liking for that one?
Oh gosh! Again, it's going to be a Hornady. It's been a while since I've shot that one, but again, probably looking at the 140 type grain bullet for most things that I can think of. Probably either the interlock or in now with the ELDX. Probably would be one of the ELDX bullets.
I think for the 280 Ackley, Hornady's factory load for it is a 162
You know what? It
ELDX.
is. You're
Yeah.
exactly right. Now that you mentioned it, so yes, that one, and that's one that I've used a fair amount when using that particular round as well too.
So how has that combination worked for you on deer? Do you have any interesting terminal ballistic stories to illustrate that?
I'll put it this way: it's killed everything that I hit,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. I've shot with that particular load, including for mule deer in West Texas and a little bit other places as well too, and with whitetails. And I'm talking about ranges out to about 400 yards, and that's usually where I kind of limit my shots to. My idea is I love shooting long range at steel, but when
Mm-hmm.
I'm hunting, I try to get as close as I possibly can. And the performance that I've gotten out of those bullets. Now, you realize too, I'm a wildlife biologist and spent many years doing research on animals, so that every animal that we shot, I was able to do a complete necropsy on and continue to do that. And I've been very impressed not only with the accuracy of that particular bullet, but also as far as terminal performance is concerned. I've been able to recover a few of them, only because I tried to shoot that animal a second time
Mm-hmm.
at a different angle, maybe than trying to put it right through the heart and lung area. But the bullets that I've recovered thus far have been absolutely beautiful mushroomed, and that includes shooting with the 280 Ackley. Actually, with from about the closest one's probably been about 25 yards, and the farthest one about 400 yards rather.
Mm-hmm. So I've shot a good number of animals with ELDX bullets of varying weights
Right.
and diameters and different cartridges. Um, I have had really good results with them. Say once the velocity gets down a little bit, say like 175 yards for a 6.5 Creedmoor, just wonderful, devastating wound channel, bullet exited, animal did not go very far at all. I have had I'm not going to say it's a problem, so to speak, because I've killed everything that I shot with it with one shot. But at closer range, penetration not so good, and I've definitely had some issues where since it didn't exit, blood trail was not very good, and I found the animal. It was just harder to find than would have otherwise been the case.
That's very interesting because I've shot some animals very close, purposely, like good sized hogs,
Mm-hmm.
and killed them with the first shot. And as they turned to go away, put one up kind of quartering away backside, and was able to follow that wound channel and recover the bullet at the very front where that bullet had traveled. My gosh, in most instances, probably 36 to almost 40 inches in some instances. And where I found that bullet, it had done a wonderful job, and it was beautifully mushroomed. It looked like he had taken a piece of paper and could say, okay, this is how I want the bullet to look when I can recover it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting.
And one of the interesting things about the ELDX is it's such a polarizing bullet that some people swear by it. They use it for anything and everything under all situations. I've never heard anybody complain about how it performs at longer range. It's got a high BC. It's accurate. It
Right.
retains its velocity really well. Performs really well. 3, 4, 500 yards. The only issues have been at close range to it. And I think sometimes, the bullet and sometimes the cartridge it's associated with get unfairly blamed for a poor shot or something. And, the animal ran off and I never found it. And so it must have failed. Um, as a quick anecdote here, I shot an Impala just 2 weeks ago in Africa, right at the end of the hunt, 25 Creedmoor, 128 grain ELDX, and about a 75, 80 yard shot. So it was a high-ish velocity
Right.
impact for it. It's not going super fast. I mean, it's a 25 Creedmoor. It's only going, what is it? 2850 at the muzzle, so it slowed down a little bit, but still probably going, I don't know, 2,700 feet per second. Quartering two shot, hit it well. The Impala staggered and then just bolted into some thick brush. And I was like, man, I know I hit it. And I could see like the tracks in the ground where it ran afterwards, and it just disappeared. And we found it, and it only went 50, 60 yards, but there was not a drop of blood on the ground from it, and the bullet did not exit. It expanded pretty well,
Yes.
just
Yes.
like you like to see.
Right.
Good expansion with it. I mean, it's maybe 30% weight retention, and I found it inside the stomach. So it did not even exit the, it was a quartering shot, so it destroyed that first lung, hit the liver, went through the stomach, stopped in the stomach, and like I said, it killed it with one shot. It didn't go that far, but it just took us probably 45 minutes to find that animal
Right.
afterwards. So it's it's not, we all want it to either drop right there or walk 5 yards or something like that, or just have blood everywhere on the ground. And that wasn't what happened here. And, so that's, you hear stories like that with it, but I mean, I think it's a lot of nitpicking too.
It is, and of course, I'll be very open with you. I very seldom use anything less than 25 caliber in most instances. Particularly, you mentioned going back to with the 175 grain ELDX. I was on a bear hunt with a 7mm PRC about 3 years ago now in Alberta, and the bear that I shot was very similar to what I related to on the hog. Shot it at about 12 yards, put it right through the heart and lungs. It turned and it was literally dead on its feet. But when it turned, I shot it a second time, again at a quarter, and that bullet there went probably, oh my gosh, probably 48 inches to where I recovered it. There was probably about, I didn't weigh it, but I'm guessing there was probably 65 to 70% of the bullet weight. Again, very beautifully mushroomed, and that was at 12 yards. So maybe the difference is between the smaller diameter caliber bullet and the 284 caliber bullet.
Perhaps, right? Because I shot a black buck with that same 175 grain ELDX out of a 7 PRC at about 50 yards. Strongly quartering two shot, hit that shoulder blade, and it exited out by the rear hip. It's not nearly as big as a bear or any of that stuff, but it exited. And that animal just dropped like that. And the vitals were just turned to jelly on it. Meat loss was horrific on that animal because of it, but penetration was not an issue whatsoever with it. Well, so my choice for the mule deer / Western whitetail, similar to yours, 270 Winchester, 145 grain ELDX. So, I just spent all that time, talking about my less than satisfactory performance with it under that very one circumstance, but that's also what I would pick too. I mean, I can't think of something that's much better for taking a 300-yard shot on a deer than that cartridge and that bullet.
You're exactly right. 270 has long been a favorite of mine, and I've shot lots of critters with it, including a lot of mule deer, whitetail, and a few other animals as well too. But here, that was I've got several 270s, but recently I've been shooting that 280 actually a little bit more.
Well, so what would your choice be for a pronghorn antelope hunt?
There I'm going to get right back down to probably the 270 because I dearly love that, and I've taken lots of pronghorn with everything from handguns to muzzle loaders to a great variety, but probably the 270 to me, that it's, as you mentioned, it's kind of an iconic Western cartridge. And again, it would be a 130 grain in either SST or interlock or something of that in the Hornady line.
Now, I chose a 6.5 Creedmoor for mine, 143 grain ELDX. I was on a pronghorn hunt in Colorado a couple years ago, and that first morning, the guide was talking to me. He's like, "What would you bring to hunt with?" And I told him, I brought a Bergara rifled 6.5 Creedmoor. And I was kind of, you didn't know the guy, and I knew he was trying to feel me out. I was like, "Oh, that's 6.5 Creedmoor," and he was like, "Oh, I love the 6.5 Creedmoor." He's like, "That's one of my favorite cartridges for hunting antelope." He's like, "I actually can't think of anything better." He's like, "I used to hunt with a 243, him personally for years." He said he'd been hunting personally and guiding combined for, I don't know, 40 something years out there. He killed a lot of antelope, and he's like, the 243 worked fine, but the 6.5 Creedmoor was just a massive step up from that. And he's like, the bigger stuff, of course, works well too, but he's like, the 6.5 Creedmoor is like that sweet spot where it's more than enough, and the recoil's not bad, and it's easy for people to hit the animal with it, and it's just devastating when it does. I shot that antelope that particular antelope on that hunt, like I said, 175, 180, 190 yards, something like that. It was a little bit inside 200. And I had gone back and penciled out the impact velocity, and it was about 2,500 feet per second, something like that.
Right.
And terminal effects were just devastating. Like I hit that pronghorn. He was broadside to me. He flipped around and started running the other direction, and I saw this giant red spot on the other side of him. And he ran 25, 30 yards and just boom, just collapsed, just like that. Bullet exited, and it was funny because he ran such a short distance and fell so quickly, and I was shooting suppressed. All the does and the fawns that were with him, they all ran, and then they stopped and looked at him. Like, and then they just went back to eating. Like everything was fine. We had to go scare him off when we went up there to go get the pronghorn. Pronghorn, not very big animals, not super tough animals, often in open, windy country like that. So flat shooting, wind bucking cartridges and bullets, like you and I talked about, I think are great. Lots of stuff will work for them, but I think the 270 also are a great choice. And I would have used it for this if I wouldn't already used it for the deer. Now let's talk about another kind of small animal where you often need to take a long shot on them, a Coues deer. What do you think there?
Oh my gosh, you're on one of my favorite subjects. I love hunting Coues deer, and I've used a great variety of different rounds, everything from a 270, 300 mag, 280. The list goes on and on. And the one I'm hunting with right now, and I'm going to regret saying this right now because the one I'm using this year is a 7mm PRC, and I would say regret because I really would like to use it on several different animals that you're going to ask me down the way. But the particular rifle I'm shooting right now is a Mossberg, and it's very capable of shots based on range out to about 800 yards. I'm shooting about a 4 or 5 inch group when I really get serious. And again, there I'm using the 175 grain ELDX Precision Hunter topped with a Stealth Vision scope. But that combination to me is extremely accurate. And that's to me, that is one of those true iconic animals. Love said 270, but the way things are going right now, that's kind of become my go-to cartridge for the Coues deer.
Okay. I went a little bit different direction. I went with a 22 Creedmoor for the Coues deer. Real flat shooting, little round like that. I have not killed a Coues deer with the 22 Creedmoor, but I've killed hogs and I've killed whitetail deer with it.
Right.
Worked great. That rifle I have is a Horizon Firearms Fanatic. Shoots very accurately. It's not real heavy, so it's easy to carry. And I think it would just be just about perfect. That 80 grain ELDX I think would be wonderful for it. I mean, really, so probably the 80 grain ELD match. Not Hornady. Nosler makes a 70 grain AccuBond for it too that I think would also be nice. But I'll go with the 80 grain ELDX and the 22 Creedmoor right now.
I'll comment on that a little bit. I've watched 2 Coues deer get wounded. Now, with all due respect, they were shot in the hind end and that were not recovered. And that's one of the reasons I've gone back to wanting to use the 7mm PRC so I can get a little bit more penetration. Because a lot of times I've killed mule deer, Coues deer out at 400 yards and beyond, but I've also shot them at 20 yards. And in this instance, a guy was using that particular round, and he shot the best shot he had. He was trying to break the hindquarter right at the pelvic girdle, and hit. The distance was probably about 45, 50 yards. And we tracked that animal for miles and miles and miles, and finally ran out of blood and were not able to take him. And from what we could tell, and where we saw it, the one time I could see him at a distance, it looked like he had gotten about maybe 6 inches of penetration rather than going in and actually breaking the hindquarter down. And I know that's a low percentage shot, but it was one of those things the guy felt very capable of, knocking that animal down with hopes of putting a second shot into him. But that did not occur. So one of the reasons I'm going back to a little bit larger, heavier bullet to where, even if there is a close shot, at least I know I'm going to be able to get that full penetration that I need to get.
What cartridge and bullet was that guy using?
I cannot remember. I'm sorry. This was down in Mexico last year. And I got called in after the fact to try to help track this deer.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it was a relatively lightweight bullet. That I do
Mm-hmm.
know, which you would expect anyway. But then there was one other one that was shot on that same trip, and it was again a lighter caliber, and it not the best of shots. But everybody thinks those deer are small, and they don't realize how tenacious they can be. And that country that they live in, particularly the areas that we were hunting down in Durango, are pretty rugged. And unfortunately, we lost both those animals.
So I talked with a guy named John Stallone on his and my podcast. I guess it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
He related a story of a client he had the previous year that just had a horrific experience with a 6.5 Creedmoor on a Coues deer, and he was saying that the guy said the guy could shoot great, but he was had limited mobility, and I
Right.
think he actually had like a disabled hunter permit, so they were able to do things that a normal hunter couldn't do legally.
Yes,
But in
sir.
any case, this guy took a shot at a Coues deer. First shot was over 900 yards, and he said that his shot was okay, but not great on it, and then it just kind of went off the rails there. They ended up killing the deer, but they had to shoot it 4 or 5 times or something like that. And um, it was a long drawn out hunt, long drawn out story and everything. But in that particular case, like I sat down and I did the math, that bullet was going so slow it probably did not expand hardly at all
Exactly.
on that initial shot. And I think he probably hit one lung with it. And had it expanded, it probably would have been a lot better for going 100
Right.
feet per second faster or something. But that is another good story of just how darn tough those. They are small, but they can be darn tough animals.
They can be really tough. Yes, sir.
Now let's shift gears and talk about another animal that can also be pretty resilient: feral hogs. So you can use whatever cartridge you want here for whatever situation. If you're hunting them over a feed or over bait, or if you're hunting them at night with a thermal or whatever, just choose a situation and choose something.
Oh my goodness. Almost all I do is I'm not a long range shooter. My deal is I'm not a fast shooter. I don't use the semi-autos and do a little bit of night hunting and those kind of things. Uh, Good gosh. I've shot them with so many different things. I'm going to switch horses with you right here and talk about a handgun. Can we do that?
Sure, sure.
Well, in that instance, I'm going to be using a 44 mag with a 240 grain Hornady XTP bullet, and probably shooting the Raging Hunter that I've been doing, the Taurus, which has been extremely accurate. Again, my shots there, of course, are going to be limited to about 100 yards or less. But with that particular combination, with either a red dot sight or a scope, I feel very comfortable at taking those shots out to 100 yards, and those have been very, very effective on all size hogs. And I'm talking about big boars that weigh upwards of 200 pounds. And then, of course, a lot of times I'm shooting them primarily just to try to get rid of hogs in the area. But also we're taking what meat we can. So we're shooting small hogs, and probably the average of the hogs maybe probably around 100 pounds or so. But
Mm-hmm.
I love the handguns, and that's my opportunity to do a little bit more handgun hunting than I do on big game these days.
Yeah, that is a really good point because I do a bunch of hog hunting out here in East Texas, and all the shots I take are very short. And I do a lot of ballistic testing on feral hogs. I'll shoot ballistic gel with a load, and then I'll go take that load out and I'll shoot a hog with it. And it's almost exactly the same range and all that stuff that I
Right.
shoot the gel at, so it works well. But it ends up being that I'm using like often a rifle with a 20, 22, 24-inch long barrel to take a
Right.
40-yard shot on a hog, and it works, but it's not always ideal. And a shorter barreled rifle or a handgun would be, if I was just saying I want something that's just going to be perfect for this, a shorter barreled rifle or a handgun would be awesome for it. I hope we hear some more handgun stuff from you down the line, because I know that's something that you've done a lot of, and that's not something that a lot of my guests talk about. For this particular case, I do a lot of thermal hunting out
Right.
here, and the way it often works is I'll get pictures of hogs coming in, hitting one of my feeders on my trail camera, but especially like this time of year when it's really hot, they're coming in before the sun comes up. And so I've started setting the feeder to go off at an hour before the sun comes up or something like that. And I'll go out there first thing in the morning and I'll ambush them in the dark, and then it'll the sun will come up right after my hunt. So I'm not messing with a dead animal at night, but I'm shooting
Right.
them in the dark. But I've used a thermal on all sorts of different rifles to kill hogs with. But if I had to pick one, it would be a 300 blackout with 110 grain Barnes TAC TX, and that's worked real well for me.
Shot a lot of those hogs years ago with a 300 Whisper in a handgun, in actually a TC. I think I was still a contender that J.D. Jones with SSK did, and we used a variety of different types of. Again, I probably going back probably about a 165. I think was the primarily grain bullet that I used back then. But you mentioned the hogs they're the perfect bullet test medium as far as I'm concerned, because particularly some of the older boars are very similar to some of the larger big game animals that we take because of that hard cartilaginous shield that they have in their bones. And the beauty of it is a lot of times you can kill a hog and then set him up at a different angle at a different distance. And, have known distance, have known everything else. And those kind of work really, really well. And over the years, like you, my gosh, I've shot a lot of hogs using them primarily as a live animalistic gel with bones, hair, hide, and all those other good things.
Yeah, that's a nice opportunity that I have out here to do that. You kind of test it in the laboratory, then you validate
Yes.
your results in the real world. All right, so now we're going to talk about hunting black bear, and we'll divide this into two different categories. One where you're hunting over bait, the other where you're hunting them spot and stalk. So what's your choices for each one?
Oh my gosh, I've hunted black bear a lot and getting ready to do two of them this year. Again, where I can. Now, if I'm hunting in the States, such as I am in Maine in September, I'm going to be using a 454 Coues, probably either a 240 grain or 300 grain XTP load. With that particular load, using a red dot sight, I feel very comfortable at taking shots out to 100 yards. And generally, in baited situations, it's going to be that close, which the hunts I'm doing this year will be in the States. If I'm going to be hunting in Canada, which does not allow me to take it's probably going to be they're probably a 45-70. I've shot a lot of bear with a 45-70 in a baited situation in those kind of places, including some really big bear. Probably a 300 grain bullet of various different makes. You're shooting so close that I've used the lever evolution that Hornady does, and I've used a lot of 300 grain soft bullets. In a spot and stalk situation, again, I've had the opportunity to do this quite a bit up in Alaska and also in British Columbia, where you're not allowed to do any baiting, and used, gosh almighty, so that I don't get away from knocking something else out I want to use down the way. Good gosh, in that kind of situation, shot a lot of them with a 270, a lot of them with a 280. I'm going to say a 30-06 because that's one of the things that I've shot a lot of bear with in those kind of situations. And again, kind of depending upon that particular rifle, anywhere from 165 to 180 grain bullet, based upon what that particular rifle really likes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I mean, all good choices. The 30-06 is one of these that you could plug into
Oh
almost
gosh,
any of the
yes.
situations we're going to talk about and work great. For me, for the black bear overbait, I went also with the 45-70, 300 grain Barnes TSX for me, spot and stalk, 7 rim mag, 160 grain AccuBond.
Yes, sir. Absolutely great combination of both.
Now, what about elk for you? What are you thinking here?
Again, I've shot elk with all kinds of different rounds, including with handguns from 44 mags up to a lot of the handgun cartridges like the 30-06 and 270 and, oh my gosh, 375 at JDJ and all those. But in an elk situation, probably I'm going to go with a 300 mag. And again,
Okay.
using anywhere from 180 to 212 grain bullet put out by Hornady. Again, depending upon that individual rifle's preference in terms of what it shoots most accurately.
Have you had experience, good, bad, and different, with the Hornady CX bullet?
I used it a fair amount when it was the GMX bullet. So
Hmm.
in those instances, I have not had a chance to do a whole lot with those yet. I've shot a couple of things with a 7 millimeter PRC in it, and I really like what it did. Going back to the old GMX bullet, I shot several elk with it in a 300 mag a few years ago. So I got really that particular rifle that I was using, which was it was a Ruger 77, seemed to really like the GMX bullet. And the ones that I shot, I was shooting at probably, oh my gosh, 125 to maybe 200, 250 yards at the very, very most.
Hmm.
It shot it very accurately, and I had no problems whatsoever with that particular bullet in the elk that I shot. And those were primarily cows and a couple of, there was one big bull that I shot in it. But, relatively small elk, if you will, body wise, compared to a really big old mature bull.
I have hunted with the CX in the 7PRC. I used the 160 CX. I took it to Africa in 2023, shot wildebeest impala with it, worked great. Uh, Nothing went more than 20, 30 yards afterwards. I also shot, I'll show you on the wall behind me, that little mule deer right there. I shot
Yes,
with
sir.
160 grain CX. That one, not a big deer, but just went down just like that. That's a story I've told on my podcast, hunting with my son.
Yes.
I slipped on some ice on just a crazy hunt I was on with him in New Mexico, and I fell on top of my rifle. And we're going back to check zero on my rifle, and saw the deer while we were doing that. So if I wouldn't have we wouldn't have seen that deer if I wouldn't have had that mishap. That was one of the most fun hunts I've ever had in my life, just
Oh
due
my
to everything
goodness.
else just kind of going on with it. And we ended up bringing home a deer. We really struggled at the beginning of that hunt, and we were hunting in late October, and I guess it was I shot that deer on October 30th, and my son told me, he's like, Dad, I really want to go trick or treating tomorrow on Halloween. I was like, okay, we're gonna do our
Okay.
best to get a deer, and then we'll leave really
There you
early
go.
tomorrow morning. We'll be back so you can trick or treat. And so I got a deer. I had a fun hunt, and he got back home in time to go trick or treating that day, and all was right in the world. For me,
Perfect.
for elk, I chose 7PRC. 170 grain federal terminal ascent. And I've not killed an elk with that exact loading, but I killed a moose with that exact loading last year, and it was wonderful, man. That shot great in my rifle. I mean, 10 shot group of like 0.9 inches with it.
Yes.
Just was awesome. And shot that moose twice, just boom, boom, just devastated the lungs of it, tipped over, maybe 10 yards from where I initially shot it, and that was a lot of fun. I know it worked great on an elk. Um, so with elk out of the way, what do you think for moose?
Oh my goodness! Again, I've shot several moose. They were shot with a 308 and a 30-06 Encore pistol when we first came out with them, uh, up from Alaska to Wyoming.
Do I understand right? Am I under or remembering this correctly that like that moose was one of the very first animals ever killed with the Encore pistol?
Well, the one in Maine was the first thing shot ever with an Encore pistol. That was the year that we introduced it, or got ready to introduce it. When I had the gun, it didn't even have officially a name yet. And
Yeah.
I was very fortunate in that year. I got drawn to hunt moose in Maine that helped through the help of Thompson Center. And I was using 180 grain Hornady, a interlock, I think, as best as I recall, on that hunt. But it had not even been named at that point. So with that particular tell the story, and we got in with about 125 yards, and I put 3 shots into it very quickly. It walked away, came back again, and we followed a little bit. And when I shot it the last time, it was dead by then, essentially. But it dropped right in the middle of the road of a road, a logging road, where we had to pull it out of the
Mm.
way so we could drag it up on a trailer. That was the first moose that I shot, and I took then that particular same 308 and had drawn a Shiras moose permit that year in Colorado and shot a Shiras moose, and they turned right around and shot a really nice 6x6 elk with it as well too there in Colorado. And then Ken French and the guys at Thompson Center were calling and said, "Man, you need to send this handgun back." And I go, I ain't about to send this one back. And they said, "No, we don't even have the specs on it or anything, and we need, before we can reproduce any, we have to have it back here." So I grudgingly sent it back and said, the next one that comes off the line, I want it regardless. It just happened to be a 30-06, which I then used to shoot several elk with, but also moose in Wyoming and in Alaska with that particular handgun. So, yeah, that was, and then we introduced it in Shooting Times, had it on the cover, and I think they were anticipating something like maybe 500 if they got really lucky on orders, and it was like almost 50,000 orders that they had got as a result of that. So they had to really go to work. But then the other moose that I've shot with a 375 H&H, and that was a moose that I shot in British Columbia. To say a rifle cartridge is one that I have not shot a moose with, but it's one that I carried on a lot of different hunts as a backup rifle, which was a 338 Win Mag. And to me, when you start hunting moose, they're big, they're tough. A lot of times you'll kill them on the first shot, but the beauty of it is they don't go down, and you get to shoot them 3 or 4 more times before they finally do go down. So I think it's been so long since I've shot that 338, but I felt very comfortable with using a bunch of different ammo, from everything from Remington to Winchester to Hornady, and like I said, it's a gun that I carried with me a lot of different places. No doubt it was capable of bringing down moose, and I did shoot an elk or two with it. Now, come to think of it, but that would probably be my choice for a moose if I were going to have to get away from the handgun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very interesting. I thought I remembered Greg telling me the story that of you killing that moose with the very first
yes, sir.
Encore, right?
Yes, sir. That was the Encore.
Okay, yeah.
And we didn't even know what the name was. It wasn't until we had all the story done, everything getting ready to go to press with Shooting Times, where I was the hunting editor at the time, and we still didn't have a name for it. So I kept calling and calling. Jim Bequette kept calling and calling TC. We need a name. We need a name. We need a name. And finally they said, okay, we'll just call it Encore. And so it went on the cover of Shooting Times as a new TC Encore, and I plugged Encore into my article before it went to press.
Now, I would like to use the 7 PRC here, but I can't because I already did. But I am going to go with the 300 Win Mag for moose, and in this case, 200 grain North Fork semi-Spitzer bonded soft point. And
yes,
man, that's an interesting thing about moose, and like you said in your stories, and like was the case in mine, you can shoot them at longer range. Oftentimes, it's a closer range encounter with them. They're in thicker stuff and all of that. I know people have shot them with stuff like a 30-30. People shoot them with handguns.
Oh yes,
and whatnot. People of course bow hunt them a lot too. But they're not. While they are very big animals, they're not especially tough animals. They are easy to kill, but not necessarily easy to bring down instantly, unless you have a spine shot or something like that. But man, I think that 200 grain North Fork would just be absolutely wonderful for it. And out of a 300 Win Mag too, you can get real good velocity with that, and you have the ability to take a couple 100-yard shot with it if you so choose. Next, we're going to talk about 2 big bears. We'll divide it up. We'll have the grizzly bear, so an interior grizzly bear, and then the even bigger brown bear. What are your choices for them?
I've been able to shoot several grizzlies, and I'm trying to remember what all I used in those. One was a 300 Ruger
Compact Magnum.
Yes, and let's see, the first one. Good gosh, I'm trying to remember. It was with a 30-06, I think. On that particular, on a grizzly. My gosh, I know what I want to use on Alaskan brown because I've shot a couple of those as well too. On a grizzly, oh my goodness, I've used a 300 Win Mag, used a 700. If I were going to go back and hunt grizzly now, it would probably be the 300 PRC.
Okay.
I really like what it does. I've shot a few big hogs with it. I've not shot anything really big. Actually, I had, when I was with Ruger, I had TC Ruger build me a rigger number one that I used and shot several things with, including whitetail deer, but several big hogs. And these hogs truly were big, and to the point of probably that weighed as much as the grizzlies that I've shot. And so we're talking about 300 pound, 325-pound range. Most people think grizzlies are really big, but the inland grizzly is not a very big animal when you get right down to it. But they've got a great reputation of being tough and tenacious and all those other kind of things. Yeah, that would probably be the one, the 300. I shot one with a 375 H&H as well, too, a few years ago as well. But yeah, 300 PRC and probably the 212, or I'm not sure. Is there an outfitter load on that now? I can't remember if there is.
I think there's a 190 CX load for it.
That would probably be my choice as far as the horny line is concerned. With that, the ones that I've shot in the past, they were like 212 ELDX. But even there, they did really well. But I think on a grizzly, I'd want something that would get a little bit more penetration, particularly if I had to take a shot from an odd angle, maybe at a second shot or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, so 300 PRC for the grizzly, and what do you think for the brown bear? Because also keep in mind we gotta go to Africa later in this interview. So
I know, and this is going to be, and I've shot one with a 454 Coues several years ago. The big bear that I shot with the 375, with the 375 Ruger, and that's really one of my all-time favorite rounds. But what all are we going to shoot in Africa? And can you give me a hint?
So we're going to do just two for Africa. We're going to do just general plains game, and then there'll be a thick-skinned dangerous game category.
Okay, well, in that case, that's an easy fix then. It'd be the 375 Ruger. Again, I've shot a lot of stuff with it in Europe, in North America, and a bunch of stuff in Africa. But I shot a huge Alaskan brown bear that the full body mounts now at the Shield store there in northern part of Dallas. I keep it up there because I just don't have room here in my office anymore since we downsized. But 375 using probably the 300 grain DGX Hornady bullet, which is the one I used in that instance. But I'd feel very comfortable with that particular load on any bear, and particularly even this particular bear squared just right, almost 11 feet, and was a Boone and Crockett bear and probably weighed about 1,200 pounds. Hit him a couple of times, trailed him a long, long way. It's just those bears are so tenacious at times. But yes, 375 Ruger for big brown bear.
So I also chose a 375 Ruger for big brown bear. In my case, 300 grain North Fork semi-Spitzer. And for the 338 Win Mag, I went with a 33 Grizzly Bear 338 Win Mag, 250 grain North Fork semi-Spitzer. Right. And each, you could, one of these deals that just due to the nature of the game, things get a little weird sometimes. But both of those are cartridges you can use easily on both bears, but with a lot of other things. But all those choices there, I think, are real solid. Now, got just a couple more North American animals before we move over to Africa. So first, really big animal here in North America, bison. What are you thinking for it?
I love the old line, and I've been very fortunate. I've shot two bison in free range in Oklahoma. One was with a 500 Smith & Wesson handgun. The other one was with a 405 Winchester, and I'm going to go with the 405 Winchester on that one. I can't remember. There's probably a 300 or 400 grain bullet. It's been a while. The animal went down so quickly, as we've talked off camera and all those kind of. I love to shoot several times when I get the opportunity. My intention was to try to shoot this particular buffalo a second time. Shot him at about 100 yards, and the animal dropped so quickly that even though it was a single shot rifle and I reload single shots fairly quickly, I could not get even a bullet into or cartridge into the chamber before this bison went down. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of history there. Didn't come along early enough to be one of the iconic Buffalo Runner cartridges, but Teddy Roosevelt seemed to like it and did very well with it in Africa in a few places. And I've hunted with it in Africa as well too, and I really like that as an older cartridge. And again, there's a little bit of history there as far as that round is concerned. Maybe not so much with bison, but it's not far from
Mm-hmm.
that era when they were used.
Yeah, I happen to have a box of 4 or 5 Winchester ammo here. Hornady's one of the few companies that makes factory loads for it, 300 grain interlock
Yes, right.
at 2,200 feet per second. So a real spicy 4570 load is pushing a 300 grain bullet at 2,000 feet per second, and this is easily 10% faster than that with a not quite as large caliber bullet, but still a pretty big bullet like that. And yeah, I mean, Teddy Roosevelt, like you said, did real well with it in Africa. I have no doubt that it would perform well on a bison. In this particular case, I chose a 375 H&H 300 grain Barnes TSX. I shot that bison right there on the wall
Yes,
behind
sir.
me with that exact load, and actually recovered one of the bullets from it.
Oh,
This is
cool. I
that's what
love it.
that's what it looks like. So it performed great, and that was a fun, memorable hunt. And it took me darn near a year with my whole family, with giving away a bunch of that meat to finish consuming all the meat from that bison.
I've actually got a bison hunt coming up in January. We sold a hunt at the recent DSC Foundation auction that involved the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, where I get to spend a little bit of time, and Steve Hornady bought it. So Steve and I are going to go up to Choctaw in January to hunt buffalo. I'm not sure; he's not sure yet either what he's going to use. I'm really leaning toward a handgun, so it'll probably be the 454 Coues. I just happen to really like that cartridge, and I know it is capable of bringing down that kind of an animal. So that'll probably be my next buffalo bison cartridge, if you will, that I'm going to be using.
Okay, very, very good. Now here is our last North American hunt, and I'm going to combine two animals in together with it. So sheep / mountain goat.
Oh gosh, the only sheep I've shot was in Mexico and was with a 270, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
in honor of O'Connor. The the mountain goat that I shot was up in British Columbia in the Prophet Musqueam area, and it happened to be the year that the 300 Ultra Mag was brought to the market, and made a shot at about 500 yards there, using a Swift Sirocco bullet. I think it was 180 grain Sirocco, if I remember
Mm-hmm.
correctly.
Sounds right.
That particular rifle, absolutely loved that, and I love that particular rifle. I was able to I was on staff at Shooting Times, and I was able to go up to the Ilion, New York factory at that time and put together that rifle myself. Now, to me, that's an awfully big cartridge for a sheep, but since I have not mentioned it, I think that's probably the one I'm going to go on, because it is very dear to me, and it's capable of shooting those long ranges in case you really need to get down to doing that. And so probably in this instance, rather say a 270, but since I've kind of used it, I would say that 300.
Now, sheep and mountain goat, along with brown / grizzly bear, are the animals that we've talked about that I have not hunted. So I'm just kind of saying what I would pick if I go on that hunt. But in this case, 6.5 PRC, 143 grain ELDX for me. Good at
Yeah, that's a
miss.
great cartridge, great round. That was one that I didn't even think about, but you know what? It would probably rank up there pretty close.
All right, now let's go across the Atlantic Ocean and we'll talk about hunting in Africa. So, like I mentioned earlier, we have two categories here: just an all-encompassing plains game category and an all-encompassing thick-skinned dangerous game. So, what are your choices there?
I've used a great variety of cartridges on plains game. Uh, and some that you wouldn't think of, and even some handgun stuff in South Africa. Unfortunately, some of the other countries I could not hunt. Uh, I love the 7x57 or
Mm.
275 Rigby, and I've shot numerous critters there, and so to me, that's one of those perfect cartridges to take to Africa. And so I've kind of saved it for that particular purpose. And so it'd be the 7x57, 7mm Mauser, but mine happened to be stamped 275 Rigby. So with that, probably with one of the Horny 140 grain. I've used some of the old 139 grain bullets, and I've used some other things as well too. But somewhere in that 140 grain, shot everything from Elon on down to Dikers with it there.
Mm-hmm. Really good, solid all-around choice for hunting Africa with the 7x57. Also a nice classic choice with a lot of history to it. I want to say Ron Spomer gave that exact same answer for his.
Oh, he did.
His
That's right, he did. I remember listening to Ron. Yes.
Uh-huh. What about the bigger animals? Your thick-skinned, dangerous game.
I've been fortunate. I've shot elephant and numerous buffalo and hippo and lion and leopard and oh my gosh, I've shot them with 375 Ruger Hornady ammo, 375 Ruger, 416 Ruger, 416 Rigby. I would probably go with the 416 Rigby or a 450 400 NE 3-inch or Nitro Express 3-inch. And good gosh, that is a real toss-up because I've shot bigger stuff with both of them. Probably go with the 416 Rigby, and I'd have to go back and look to see what the bullets were that I used. But I've shot my first buffalo with the 416 Rigby.
Okay, very, very good. So for me, Africa Plains game, 30-06, 180 grain North Fork bullet. Not very sexy, but
hey,
just flat out
very
worked.
effective. I've done a bunch of animals there with a 30-06. Yes, sir.
And then for the thick-skinned dangerous game, I'd go up to a 4.58 Win Mag, 500 grain North Fork semi-Spitzer / cup nose solid for first shot / follow-on shots.
Right.
Now, last two. These are ones that you can reuse a cartridge for. So anything is fair game here. So first is your best all-around hunting cartridge you're going to hunt everything with except thick-skinned dangerous game. And then another choice for one cartridge you're going to hunt everything with for whitetail deer up to and including elephant.
Oh my gosh, going back to lots of experiences and all that kind of thing, probably for the first one, a 30-06. Okay. And again, depending upon the loads used, depending on the individual rifle that I used, which one was most accurate in that particular rifle. But I've shot lots of things here in North America and also in Africa with the 30-06. So for the most part, yes, that one. If it comes down to having to choose one cartridge with which to hunt the world with, it would be a 375 Ruger. I've hunted here in the States, everything from whitetail up to 1,200-pound brown bear, including the elk and all that kind of stuff. In Africa, I've shot everything from elephant down to little gray dikers that are about the size of cottontails with it there. I've hunted with it in Europe for roe deer up to red stag and reindeer. Australia, hunted there with hunted buffalo there with the 375. So 375 Ruger. I've come to find out initially when I started traveling with 375 Ruger, I always carried a 375 H&H with me as well, thinking that I was not going to be able to find Hornady ammo somewhere. But I came to find out that in checking in a lot of the little mom and pop stores, you want to call them that, even in some of the remoter areas of Africa where they did sell ammo, I could find 375 Ruger. Same thing in Australia and same thing in Europe as well too. So that particular round, I've shot it a fair amount, including out to oh gosh, we shot it out to 700 yards and on the FTW ranch. Tim Fallon and I hunted together a fair amount and all over the world there for a while, and that was kind of the choice of ours. But there at the FTW ranch, we were shooting ranges out to 700 yards. And at 700 yards, we were shooting. We were using both Hornady and Barnes bullets and custom loads that we put together, and we were shooting actually 4-inch groups at 700 yards.
Wow.
And at 700 yards, you're still carrying a great amount of downrange energy. I can't remember the figures. It's been too long since we did that. But as I recall, those figures were comparable to a 308 at the muzzle. So you've got a lot of downrange energy. And with any kind of proper bullet construction, you're capable of bringing down anything in the world, anything from using it from solids to 200 grain type bullets, or even maybe less. But I found that probably no question, 375 Ruger.
I think that's a wonderful, wonderful choice. And even though I think Hornady is still the only company that makes factory ammo for it, they do a good job of making a lot of it and then
Yes.
supporting it really well. And so I'm not surprised that you didn't have issues, finding it in Australia, Europe, Africa, all that stuff. The hunting outfitter I work with in South Africa has a Ruger guide gun, a 375 Ruger, as one of our client rifles. And as of 2020, we had over 3,000 rounds through that rifle, and we're still using it. So I don't know how many rounds that thing has through it since then, but it's killed a lot of animals. And so you're getting 375 H&H performance out of a shorter package, and oftentimes out of a shorter barrel with it too. And so it's
absolutely. I've got several 375 Rugers, including the Ruger number ones and the standard, and also the RSI, and then got several Ruger M77s, and then of course recently Mossberg came out with a 375 in a carbine type rifle. I carried it on a moose hunt last year. Unfortunately, did not get a chance to use it, but the rifle that I would fall back onto is, as you mentioned, is that Ruger guide rifle with a little bit shorter barrel, very quick handling. I've had some work done on it by Hill Country Rifles, just to kind of work on the trigger a little bit and a few little cosmetic things. But that if it came down to having just one rifle, it would be that one.
And I know, to your point about shooting it at long range, I know Gunworks at least used to. I don't know if they still do, but at least they used to make their skull rifle in 375 Ruger, and they wouldn't be messing with that cartridge if it weren't something that was capable at long range. I remember being surprised when I heard about that, but also your results, once again, in light of that, aren't really surprising, regardless of what people might think about that cartridge and what it is really most commonly used for. Now, for me, for those two choices, for these two cartridge choices, my best all-around caliber for not dangerous game, 7mm PRC, and then my everything to include dangerous game is the 9.3 by 62.
Yeah, I really have. I've been shooting that 7 PRC a fair amount, and here lately, and like I said, for the most part, if I were to have it a second one, just because of hunting different parts of the world, I'm not too sure yet what the 7 PRC ammo availability is, but were it of the same availability, and I assume it will, because seeing the popularity, that would probably be my top choice over the 30-06. But with knowing that I can find 30-06 ammo in some of the remotest parts, including some of the little villages I've been in Alaska and up in Canada when we were on caribou hunts, I know that I could always find 30-06 ammo.
Yeah, very, very good. Now, as the last question, this is the thing I'm asking everybody on the show for, or that comes on the show this year for, and it can be something you've already said, and it can be your 375 Ruger. You pick either a single cartridge or a single bullet that you're going to hunt everything with for the rest of your life. So it could be, say, for instance, a Barnes bullet that you can use in a 223 up to a 5.77, or you choose a single cartridge. What is your choice? Is it a cartridge or a bullet, and which one?
It would be a cartridge, and that would be the 375 Ruger. Again, like I said, I've literally hunted the world with it, and I know ammo is available, and I've shot everything with it, and knowing that maybe if Hornady becomes the only one that produces that round, as you mentioned, they've done a great job of distributing those rounds across the world. But I know it's capable of bringing down an elephant. I know it's capable of taking down a 3-pound blue diker as well too. So, and you put anything in between, it works very well. I've used it on alpine ibex even in Austria a few years ago. So yes, that would be that one round that I would choose, kind of as I mentioned earlier, and we'll reiterate here, just the 375 Ruger for the one gun that I would hunt the world with for the rest of my life.
Now, a lot of people that have come on the show this year have said 375 H&H is their answer, which I think is also good. But as they say in Africa, 375 Ruger, 375 H&H, same. In terms of The package and the label is different, but the performance is essentially the same.
Well,
Now,
there's nostalgic value to that 375 H&H as well too, and then the kind
yep.
of, I mean, that kind of way I look at that 275 Rigby when you get right down to it.
Now, when you and I were emailing a couple months ago to set up this interview, you mentioned that you had used, I want to say, something like 70 something different cartridges to take game with over your life.
Actually, I went back and added to the list, and I made a list of everyone that I've used that I've taken animals with, not just that I've shot, but
Yeah.
if you combine both rifle and handguns, it's 79 different rounds or different
My goodness.
cartridges. Two different shotguns in terms of taking not birds, but four-legged critters, both in a 12 gauge and a 20 gauge. And then with muzzleloader, there were three of them that I've shot and killed animals with, and that's a 32, a 45, and a 50. Hunted with a 54 a little bit, but never did do much with it to try to really take an animal kind of thing. But so yes, sir. But you got to realize I've been around a long time, and during the years when I was on staff at Shooting Times and wrote for a lot of different gun magazines as well, too, and hunting magazines, I had the opportunity to try lots of different rounds on different animals, and there's some really great rounds out there that just kind of no longer, or like 338 Federal is one of those little rounds. It's just a fantastic little round. I hunted with it in Africa several times, and it's a shame it's not getting the publicity that it probably should have. But there's so many of those rounds. Everything I got, the smallest round that I've taken an animal with was a 17 Remington years ago, and that was, we were shooting some whitetail does, and we were doing a lot of collection work, and then also did a lot of stuff with a 22 long rifle and a 22 mag, doing the same thing in collecting animals when we were doing research, particularly in areas where before we had suppressed rounds or suppressors, you had to do something that was relatively quiet, and 22 long rifles, when the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour at 3 o'clock in the morning, not too many people pay attention to it. So did some of that as well too.
Are you're working for the state? Are you able to get special dispensation to use something like a 22 long rifle and a deer that's not legal for
this goes back a way, but yes, years
Yeah.
ago I had both a Texas state collection permit and a federal collection permit. The federal collection permit had to do with back when everybody was trying to prove that lead shot being ingested was killing waterfowl, and my job at the time was to collect a minimum of 125 gizzards, whether I shot them or somebody else shot them. So I was not limited to bag limits on ducks, and also was not limited to the number three, as far as three shots in a shotgun. I could, because of that, I could actually carry 7 shots. But yes, and during those days, I carried a collection permit to where we were involved. A gentleman by the name of Rod Marburger, who was a biologist for the state. He unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago, but he and Dr. R.M. Mick Robinson and I did a tremendous amount of research, a tremendous amount of collecting of animals across the state. We could take an animal anytime that we felt it necessary for research purposes, be it disease purposes, or if somebody else was doing research, we were the ones that shot the animals. And so we were not restricted to bag limits, times, as long as we would ask permission of the landowner, and as long as we had his permission, we could take animals. The only places we couldn't take animals with our collection permit without extra permission was on state property, kind of thing. But during those years, we shot animals with so many different rounds, with so many different bullets. And this goes back to talking about starting in about really the winter of 1969. And as such, I had the opportunity to not only take a lot of different animals, been always very interested in guns and bullets and their performance. Every animal that I shot, and we tried all kinds of different bullets, designs. Often, even back then, was asked by different bullet makers to field test bullets and to give feedback on them, because we also, every animal that we took, we did a complete necropsy on. So we were able to see exactly what kind of tissue damage was being done at different velocities, at different bullet styles, at different bullet weights, and all those kind of things as well too. So with that being the case, it allowed me to try all kinds of different things. And then the years that I served on staff as a gun writer type of thing, to utilize so many different loads and bullets and rounds and, and rifles and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the reasons that I had the opportunity to take animals with that number of different cartridges.
Can you share one interesting story with one of your more esoteric cartridges that you've used?
How about I tell you my first deer story?
All right.
It was back in 1961, opening day of deer season. I had not shot a deer. It was the very first deer that I ever had an opportunity to shoot, although I'd been hunting since I was about 6 years old. Back then, my deer rifle was a Remington bolt action Model 33, shooting 22 long rifle. That happened to be the first bolt action that Remington made.
Wow.
But in this instance, I'm sitting up in a tree, huge oak tree out west of Houston, about 90 miles. Opening morning deer season. I'm so excited. I got there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Sunlight doesn't come up until about almost 7. So I'm sitting there, got a 12 gauge single shot shotgun. I got 2 buckshots, one in the barrel, one stuck in my mouth. So I got quick, ready access to it. Finally, it gets light enough, and I look down. I hear a shot off in the distance, and I look down, and oh my God, the world record whitetail deer is running down underneath me. And I remembered I've got this shotgun in my hand. And so I kind of pointed the rifle, that shotgun at that deer, because there was no real sight on it. There was just a little notch in the receiver and a bead on the front end of the barrel. And I kind of pointed at that deer, cocked the hammer, pulled the trigger, and oh my God, the world record deer goes down, immediately jumps up and starts running off. And I'm going, oh my God, I got to shoot this animal again. I got to shoot him again. Well, back in those days, I think this was an old bridge shotgun. I can't remember who manufactured it, but when you broke it open with a lever in the back, when it broke open, if you pulled on the forend a little bit too hard, it disengaged the barrel. So I quickly broke this thing open, pulled on the forend too much, watched the barrel go falling down and stuck in the mud 30 feet down below me. World record whitetail deer is running over. I still got that double-aught buckshot stuck in my mouth. Got a forend in one side, hand the buttstock in the other. And for a moment, I thought about jumping down to recover this barrel and run after this deer. Well, I kind of halfway fell off of that big old oak tree, got over there, took that barrel and went, blew all the mud out of it, put it all back together, shoved that other buckshot that I had in my mouth, and go running off the cross, trying to find this deer out in the underbrush, and looking off in the distance, knowing the deer's got to be way off somewhere in the distance, which couldn't have been very far because of the thick it was. I fell right over something. I turned around, and here's this deer that I just shot, the world record. Huge, unbelievably big. And as I turned to look at his antlers, I watched that world record shrink down to where there's a spike about this big, about a 6-inch spike on one side and a 4-inch spike on the other side. That's my iconic cartridge rounds, whatever story for you. So
talk about a high-speed come apart with your gun, man. You try to reload it, and the thing just comes apart in your hands.
Which was an introduction to, knowing that, by gosh, I wanted a 30-30 Model 94, just like my dad and everybody else in the community shot. But there have been so many different rounds over the years. And when you get right down to it, that particular, I wish I could have saved. I lost the dead gum case somewhere down the way. So unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to have the way I'd show it to you right now. And I did have that deer mounted. It looks like a rat with horns, with antlers. And if I had to get rid of all the mounts I have here in the office, that would be the one that I would keep. And I've got it stuck off in a corner where you can't see it right now, unfortunately. But
well, that is a great story, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. That's a good one to kind of wrap up on today. Can you tell us where people can go to learn more about you and the work that you're continuing to do? I know you're still very, very active in the community and do a lot of writing for a lot of places.
I do. I do a lot with Dallas Safari Club as well, too. And people learn more about it by going to biggame.org. That's BIGGAME.org, and with the foundation as well, too, which is dscf.org. But from a personal perspective, I do a podcast. I actually do DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn that can be heard on, oh my gosh, on Spotify and you named the ones. Right now, we're not on Patreon, but I think there's probably a move afoot to take it to Patreon as well too in the near future. Uh, so they can learn more about that by going to my website, which is www.larryweishuhn.net, and I'll spell it. It's LarryWeishuhn.net. And of course, I do a weekly radio show with Luke Clayton that we turn into a weekly podcast called Luke Clayton. Catfish Radio with Luke Clayton and friends. Then he and I and Jeff Rice also do a weekly TV show that's called A Sportsman's Life that can be found on Carbon TV and our own YouTube channel as well too. But probably the easiest way for people to get in touch with me right now is we're working on getting some things set up on my website. But just go to my Facebook page, which is Larry Weishuhn, and direct message or personal message me there, and I will make every attempt to get back to anybody that sends me a message there.
Well, very, very good. I will put links to those things in the show notes. You have been very generous with your time with me over the years, and I'm sure you are with the rest of the community as well. You have a lot of experience, and we really appreciate you sharing that experience and those stories with us.
Well, you're very kind, and I love your podcast as well too. And I get to spend a lot of windshield time, and thank God for your podcast because I love listening to it there.
Well, thank you so much, Larry. That is high praise indeed. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure and honor.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I really like recording these episodes. They're a lot of fun to do, so I hope they are as much fun for you to listen as they are for me to record. Now, as he stated, Larry does a bunch of stuff. He writes books, he does videos, he does blog posts and other articles, he has a podcast, he does a couple radio shows, all of that stuff. Learn all about everything Larry is up to at his website. Link is in the episode description. Make sure you also check out episode 336, episode 315, episode 372. Those are the same episodes that I did in this style with Ron Spomer, Joseph Von Benedict, and Hootie Hoo. Larry was also on the show with me, episode 350, where we talk about the secrets of whitetail deer hunting. That was a fantastic episode. Highly recommend checking it out prior to deer season this year. Now, the fact that you are listening to this podcast means that you are serious about making your hunting dreams come true. The next thing you can do to help make those hunting dreams come true is to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast service to ensure you don't miss out on my future episodes, and go to biggamehuntingpodcast.com/ebook. Sign up there to get my free ebook on the best hunting cartridges and join my mailing list at the same time. Remember, you can make your dream hunt turn into a reality, and we can help. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next time on the Big Game Hunting Podcast.